pay really close attention to the treats and stuff that you usually would eat through the holidays and observe and eat slower so that you can kind of know when. You've just tuned into Rebel Wellness Podcast, your resource for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kaylee, also known as Coach Kales. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic beauty and body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopt a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the show, Rebels. Today's episode, I wanted to spend a little bit of time for those of you who are using semaglutide, GLP-1 receptor, Ozempic, Wegovy. You guys probably have gotten an ad on social media for these medications. Many of you might be actually using these medications. So if you found this episode and are new to the podcast, welcome to Rebel Wellness. And if you are a repeat offender and this episode is something that, maybe you know somebody who's on a semaglutide, or you personally are, and you want to optimize your results and have the best chance possible for whatever your goal is with it. Because I have quite a few clients and friends who are using this medication for a multitude of reasons. Most of us just see the weight loss. And as females, not going to lie, most of us are enticed by the fat loss side of the medication. However, it's really important to also understand that there are other goals that a lot of women have with it. So reserving your judgment of whether or not somebody uses this medication is really important, because over the last 2.5 years or so of these medications being hot topics, points of conversation, especially when we see celebrities like Christina Aguilera, Adele, so many people using these meds and having insane transformations. I think even like Priyanka Chopra and stuff, everybody has been using it to really move the needle on like either those final pounds or a significant amount of pounds, and or trying to get fertile, trying to prevent diabetes if they're in the diabetic zone. There's so many people who actually would be really shocked to see that they are actually pre-diabetic but don't know it. And so it's really important that we kind of think of all these different angles that people could be coming at this medication. I actually even have somebody who's using it for a lot of the inflammation that comes with being a double MTHFR gene mutation. And it's been amazing for her so far. And so there's, again, so many reasons that this medication is actually really powerful. And if used properly and safely from an accredited compounding pharmacy and or from your practitioner, if your insurance will cover it, those are all legitimate things. You should be considering it if that is a situation that you have been struggling with for years on end. I am not a huge fan of people using it kind of willy-nilly without a specific reason, just trying to get as skinny as possible. I would definitely not suggest that, because you can do more harm than good if your body doesn't need it, right? And so this is something that I wanted to talk about today as we head into the holiday season, because, I was consulted by a company called Orderly Meds, which I am actually a partner now with the Precision Nutrition, my certification. They have partnered with Orderly Meds to be a accredited compounding pharmacy option for those who need to look into semaglutide or tirzepatide out of pocket. And so that is a company that I definitely would trust. I have several clients using that right now. You can go to my show notes if you're somebody who's interested in looking into that option. It's all the way down to almost $200 a month, which is really low. That is really low, especially for coming from a pharmacy that is trustworthy, because there are a lot of ways to get semaglutide and you're never sure the quality of where they're sourcing. So I kind of did the due diligence, and when I chatted with one of their team members, it was great, when I shared a lot of this information that I'm going to share with you guys today. We also chatted a little bit about, the trustworthiness of their company and all this different stuff. And so I feel very confident that they are a great option for you. So that's why I'm going to suggest it to my listeners now. And so today I want to talk about snacking and or just meal building when you are on a semaglutide GLP-1 receptor agonist medication. And I'm kind of using a lot of those different terms so you guys kind of know that they're all the same thing. I know it's really confusing for the general population because it's almost like Ziploc. We hear Ozempic, but all it means is semaglutide and all that. So a lot of times, that's like the technical medication name, and then even more technical is the GLP-1 RA, which basically just means it's a receptor agonist for the GLP-1 that's naturally in our bodies. So the thing that's kind of a good reminder when you're thinking about this medication is that it's a peptide receptor to something that's already naturally in your body. So it's not as artificial as, let's say, taking metformin, which is like a medication that is going to do specific things artificially through the mechanisms of, what is that pharmaceutical compound. Whereas similarly ish, GLP-1 is still a medication, but it is one that is a peptide receptor. So it is another peptide talking to another peptide that's already in your body and kind of encouraging it and increasing it in your body to mute your, appetite, slow down your digestion. And that's where a lot of people are getting the results. However, on the other side, there is appetite loss. Some of my clients have actually significant appetite loss, and it is really hard to even get maybe 700 calories in a day. And that's where this medication can be tricky, especially for those who have struggled with maybe an eating disorder or a variety of different relationships with food. So I would also suggest, like I've said in many other Ozempic episodes and such, be very conscientious about your specific relationship with food and your body image before you move forward with a medication like this, because it's really important that you consider all the angles that it could harm you long term more than help you. Just because you reach a certain goal weight doesn't mean that where your mental health around, again, your relationship with food and your relationship with your body is going to improve. I think that's kind of a lie that we've all been sold by our culture. And it's unfortunate because a lot of females will just continue to strive to be as small as possible at the expense of their health and longevity. And we're seeing a lot of women, get early onset dementia, early onset Alzheimer's, early onset cancers, osteoporosis, just because we are starving our bodies of nutrients that we deserve. And a healthy body doesn't look like a size 0 for everyone. I think I've mentioned it before in the past, but even Taylor Swift said like was starving herself and working so hard to stay a certain size, which was between 0 and 2. And she found that her body is actually healthiest and happiest naturally between size 4 and 8. And that's a really healthy size range for, she's tall and lanky. So a variety of genetics too, different heritages can really play a role in what is your body's actual healthiest. And it may not look like the image in your head or the image on social media because, especially on social media, everything is doctored up. I mean, the Kardashians are constantly criticized for how much you can obviously see that they doctor up their photos to look like insane body ratios. And even them in real life don't look like that. Okay. So just a little kind of side tangent that it's really important to consider those things, because if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that you're considering it due to fat loss, and that's totally fine. But just come at it with the right mentality and headspace, because it can be worse in the long run. So I definitely wouldn't suggest it if you don't feel like you're in a healthy place there. Maybe first I would suggest trying to find a relationship with food coach or a certified therapist who can work with you to kind of break through some of that stuff before you start this type of medication. All right, let's go on and go back into this conversation. So today we're going to talk all about kind of my best advice and some actual legitimate recipe ideas for healthier snacks. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the why, because there's some things that are really important for you to know when you're using a GLP-1 medication, as far as how you can best optimize your health alongside, going through the kind of significant changes that it will instill in your body. So we're going to dive into that, but I do want to remind you guys that this episode is for informational purposes only, and it's definitely not a substitute for professional medical advice. So always consult with your healthcare provider for any of your personalized guidance and care on your health journey. Today's episode is brought to you by Orderly Meds, your trusted telemedicine platform for GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. If you've been looking for sustainable weight loss solutions or improving your overall systemic inflammation, you're in the right place. So here's the deal. At Orderly Meds, your care is led by board-certified doctors, which matters a lot. Treatments come from FDA-regulated pharmacies, which matters even more. And their pricing, it's always upfront and crystal clear. So right now, they're making it even easier to start with their Simply Start 3-month starter program. And you can take that first step towards those goals without breaking the bank, which also matters, guys. So semaglutide is just $99 a month for the first 3 months, and that's literally $300 in savings. Or you can try tirzepatide for $199 a month, which that saves you $600 in those first 3 months. So if you're ready to step into the new year feeling more empowered with your physique and more supported by a team you can trust that is here for you and custom to your needs, go to the show notes, click the Simply Start link, and you can get started today. All right, let's dive into this episode. Okay, so while it can definitely be said that being on a GLP-1 medication could be your superpower for staying more aligned on your health goals throughout the holiday season, it's also important to know the other side of the picture. So when you have a suppressed appetite, silenced food noise, you can look at food and be totally disinterested in it. That can be helpful, but oftentimes I have seen a lot of clients and just people, all over when they're sharing their experiences, YouTube, forums, etc., that you end up reducing your overall calories significantly, which then reduces your overall nutrients. So our bodies need those vital nutrients every single day in a total of like the full week, all those different things. And it's also well known that GLP-1 medications reduce your absorption of even electrolytes. And so a lot of people, it's suggested that you drink more electrolytes, especially if you're sweating, if you're working out or if you're just a sweaty person, and you need to replenish those. So especially your magnesium, depends on your sodium, how much water you drink is going to be important because your body will not be overburdened by those minerals if you drink enough water. And enough water for most adult females is over 75 ounces a day. So if you can be in that 75 to 90 ounces a day zone, that's perfect, because electrolytes are water soluble, so they will come out in your pee. They will be a problem if you're not drinking enough water and you're drinking too many electrolytes and you're not sweating. There's a lot of kind of misconceptions online about that. So that is something that you should definitely prioritize throughout the holiday season. Most people benefit from the reduction of reaction to alcohol, so you don't really like it as much. They're kind of researching GLP-1s for alcoholism recovery, which is really cool. But at the same time, it is important to know that you should not be overdoing it with the alcohol while you're taking this medication, just by the way that your body is reacting to, how it's processing insulin and it's reducing your blood sugar. And, alcohol is immediately turned into ethanol as your liver's trying to process it. And then it can be like a big bomb of sugar in ethanol form that is not going to be great for the reaction of how GLP-1 changes everything. Again, not trying to get too sciencey, but it is just not ideal and it's not recommended. That's why most doctors will counsel you and say, like, you should really reduce to remove totally your alcohol consumption while on this medication. But not only that, drinking alcohol, even a couple glasses in one night, will slow down your results if you're trying to have a fat loss. and a body recomposition goal with this medication. So it's also important to know that, the more you drink and the more consistently you drink, the less results and the less health benefits you're going to get while on this medication. So that's really important to note because holiday season tends to go hand in hand with an increase in alcohol. And that is something that's really tough to avoid. But, if you can pre-prepare, bring yourself a little mocktail. That's what I did last holiday season because I've been reducing my alcohol consumption significantly. And I would buy the little DeSoy brand, and I like the purple loon flavor, but there's a lot of other good flavors, and there's a lot of companies out there that have some great mocktails, and they're in little cans. And it's really honestly not that weird to just bring your own little can, put it in the fridge if it's a family house, pop it out when everybody's bringing out their alcohol. And, there's also adaptogenic effects that are in some of these. And so they help you get a little bit of that euphoric kind of zone, which is great because then you're kind of benefiting from both sides. And I've even had a friend who recently went sober, and she and I shared this like kind of, it's a play on rosé of the DeSoy brand, and she totally felt the effects of it, and I don't feel it as much, but I'm glad that like she did because she really liked it. She was like, well, this is really great, this is like a cool alternative. So I'd highly recommend just bringing your own little cans of or bottles of a mocktail. I don't necessarily recommend the non-alcoholic alcohol because A, it tastes pretty gross, and B, I don't know the quality of what's in it to be like helpful for your body, if that makes sense, because a lot of times it's just alcohol that has had a lot of the alcohol removed, if that makes sense. So I don't know if I'd recommend those, but you can also just, juice, water, milk, if you're comfortable with that, that's great. But all that to say, definitely recommend that you reduce your alcohol significantly when you're taking GLP-1, especially if you're doing it short term. So you really have to think about it. You only have like maybe 1 or 2 holiday seasons that you're going to be using a medication that interferes with alcohol metabolization. So you probably want to just avoid it as much as you can. Okay. As far as other food tips, though, going back to that concept of needing to get enough nourishment because you're eating so few, I would definitely recommend you probably go on a good quality daily vitamin during the experience. I also usually recommend like a good quality magnesium supplement, glycinate, or a complex. And then I also usually recommend that you take a good quality fish oil. My other episode recently that I had launched about health tips for when you travel. Actually, if you go into my show notes, it'll be a really quick link to a bunch of the supplements that I would recommend from good quality companies under all those categories. And that would be the quickest way for you to find out. Or you can go to coachkels.com, and there's also a list I have put together of all my favorite supplements. Go to the Amazon links little drop down in the menu. But with that said, it's really important for you to orient your food towards the best quality nutrients as possible. So you're really going to want to look for quality lean protein or just quality protein in general, followed by some fresh seasonal produce and whole grains for your nutrients and digestion, as well as healthy fats balanced throughout the day. So you don't want high fat in a single meal. So I would say usually going over 10 grams of fat, especially a more complicated to digest fat like saturated fat. You want to reduce those as much as possible when on this medication, because if you think about it, when your digestion is slowing down, anything that's really hard to digest is going to take a long time and it's going to hang out in your tummy. And that's why a lot of people on GLP-1 who don't adjust and understand the macros in the food they eat, so the protein, carbs, and fats, they tend to deal with nausea and, diarrhea or constipation because they keep choosing poorly balanced meals and snacks that involve too much fat, usually fake fat, and not enough fiber. So of course their gut's going to have a hard time digesting it, and then you're going to get those unwanted side effects of nausea. So if you're somebody who's on GLP-1 and you keep wondering why you keep getting nauseous and such, you need to observe the food you're eating and try to reduce some of those excess fats. But again, this is where supplementing with a good quality omega-3 fish oil will be helpful for balancing it, because I think by default, you're going to reduce your overall fat intake. And fat is really important. Fat is how steroid hormones communicate with your cells through cholesterol. And so that's where, you really do still need healthy fats, but you need to be prioritizing healthy fats. So even if you are like, I don't feel like eating anything today, but I could totally eat large fries at McDonald's or something, don't do it. It's not going to be good for you. It's going to hurt your stomach. And that's probably why you're going to struggle. And, a lot of people bail on the medication because they just are too sick too long. But it's again because they haven't worked on developing better meals. And so if you want, a macro grocery list or something like that, I have a free downloadable on coachkels.com that has a huge list of what are a whole bunch of protein ideas, what are a whole bunch of carbs, what are a whole bunch of starchy carbs, what are a whole bunch of produce, and then healthy fats. So that's a great free download. No strings attached. Just check it out and you can get that to help you build better meals. And today I'm going to also give you a little bit of ideas for some lighter snacks or lighter meals that are high in protein, have a good amount of fiber, and are easier to digest. So stay tuned to the end of this episode for those. But it's really important that you think about your meals as, I like to call them, rounded meals. They have all of those categories. So again, protein for your lean muscle, fiber out of your carbohydrates for your digestion and your nutrients. You get nutrients from your protein as well, especially animal proteins and good quality animal proteins. So you're going to want to continue to prioritize those. And then you want some of your healthy fats balanced throughout the day. Okay. So those are the three categories that you need to think of when you're building rounded meals for your best results with keeping your body as nourished as possible. Because it's going to be really fighting against you while you're on this medication, because it's going to be, you oxidizing and utilizing the fat that it's taking from your body, which is how you're losing fat. You're not getting as many nutrients just because of the digestion thing, like we had talked about. And you might be a little bit more dehydrated chronically because of how the medication works as well. So those are all those things that you should really keep at the forefront of your mind if you want to have the best health coming out of utilizing this medication. It should never be a goal to be on a medication like this long term for the rest of your life, because there's always going to be a trade-off with what it's going to affect in your body long term. Short term, we do have research that it is, especially if you do more of a microdose or you stay under that 0.5 for your weekly dosage, a lot more people tend to have a good time getting off of it and benefiting from it. Some people can even maintain like a really tiny microdose that's even below the 0.25, even lower than that. So that's something where, that's a whole nother conversation. I'm going to have somebody who's a specialist in this talk about that soon. So stay tuned to season 3 next year. But it is important to know that you can reduce and remove the medication from your life, but you need these habits in place to maintain those results. You will not keep the fat off if you keep those same habits that got you to where you were before you started the medication. So that's super key, guys, super key. So building those habits before or alongside the use of the GLP-1 med is so key. Okay, so the other thing that is important that I wanted to kind of touch on is high fat and high sugar snacks, aka most of the desserts that we're going to see around the holidays, are going to really mess your stomach up and possibly give you brain fog, just make you feel like crap. So I would say if you're going to have some of those, I would first, a really good pro tip throughout the holidays, regardless of if you're on this medication or not, is eat the protein first. So at a family gathering, eat your turkey, eat whatever, eat your roast beef, whatever, eat your chickpeas. Chickpeas are technically more carb than they are protein, but they do have protein involved, so they can be more filling for some people if you are vegetarian or vegan. But eat the protein first. Try to eat as much of it, at least 75% of it as possible first. See if you can get full on that, plus some vegetables. So if there's some vegetable sides, some families don't do vegetable sides at all. There's been so many parties that I've gone to where I'm like, okay, so the only vegetable available is like creamed canned green beans. Like, it's better than nothing, but the cream part, is high fat, so it'll probably mess with your stomach. And usually that is involved with butter as well. So even though that might be the vegetable option, just know, like, again, learning your macros is really important, because you can see like, okay, there's a lot of fat, because you can ask whoever made it, what was in the recipe? And if you hear cream, butter, oil, any of those things, those are all really high in fat. So they are possibly going to hurt your stomach. But you can do like maybe a small portion and see how you feel. But you want to eat slowly. You want to feel it out because your body is not going to be able to catch up with you in that moment as fast as you would want, as fast as you have in the past, because your digestion is significantly slowed down. Let's say it's operating at 30% now versus 100. And so you should eat much slower and, prioritize eating the protein first. See if you can reach that kind of satiation cue. And then when you want to have some of the dessert, if it's a high fat, high sugar dessert, just have a small portion, have a couple bites, share it with a family member, whatever it is. Or you can even just have the slice and then just don't finish it and toss it. It's okay. Wasting sugary things isn't as much of a waste, especially when it's like at a party, because other people are probably eating it too, and it's fine. Okay. What matters more is the value you get from it. So if those 2 or 3 or 4 bites gave you what you wanted out of it to have that favorite holiday dessert, but then you don't need to finish the whole thing to have that value, right? So ultimately, and that's a mindset that comes with relationship with food that is really important to break. And a lot of my clients have more success when we break from those expectations that you only enjoy something or something is only fully enjoyed if you eat the whole thing or you get seconds. Growing up in a Filipino family, seconds was almost like expected and it's almost insulting if you don't get seconds. So breaking from that expectation is really important when you're trying to build a healthier relationship with food for your health goals, especially as we get up in our late 20s, into our 30s, into our 40s. We just can't eat the same stuff the same way as we used to. So, and that's okay. It's like having guilt around that or feeling bad or feeling restricted it's all kind of a mindset, because in reality, treats are treats. They should be very rare and far and few in between. But nowadays we have gotten so used to treats being like nightly or multiple times in a day. And our brains get addicted to the sugar and the hyperpalatability of sugar paired with fat and salt that we just kind of overeat and we forget that it still is a treat. We shouldn't be having that much of it. Back in the day, people found like a beehive and then they got honey for like a few days and then that was it. And then they lived off of their meat, seeds, berries, all that stuff. And so it was really uncommon, like even in, the pilgrim times, like they didn't have highly processed sugar like we have now. And like candy was reserved for the wealthy people as society moved forward. And so it's always been something that, you really shouldn't have in excess, and you'll have your best health reducing your sugar intake, especially because the point of the GLP-1 med is to help your blood sugar. So that's something that I really wanted to get in the meat and potatoes of today's episode when it comes to approaching, your meals and your snacks, because everything should be in line with those different categories that I just talked about. And it's super important, if you lose your appetite and you don't feel like eating at all the entire time, is to try your best to at least get the protein in. The biggest thing that a lot of people are concerned about, and there's a lot of fear mongering online about, is the muscle loss factor. But newsflash, everybody who's been in the business of fat loss and the business of health and recomposition, like me, in the fitness industry, nutrition industry, etc., we all know that with any sort of weight loss comes muscle and fat. So weight loss is going to be the total number that's being lost on the scale. But the scale doesn't tell you just how much muscle and just how much fat is part of that weight. However, there's always going to be a little bit of both. That's just how the body works when it's in a deficit and when it's metabolizing your reserves, so to speak, because your excess fat is stored energy, right? So the thing that is also important is when you don't eat enough protein and your body doesn't have enough amino acids, it will go to your muscle tissue to break it apart and get those nutrients into the body while it's going through this deficit, because a deficit in calories is stressful. Your body needing to use its stored energy is a stress response, because it is how our body is being like, uh-oh, okay, I need to use this stored energy because I'm not getting enough energy through my mouth. So then you're needing to pay attention to how much protein you provide your body so that you keep your lean muscle mass high, especially for those of us who are strength trainers or people who like to work out or people who just want to be strong. Maybe in your job in general, you need some level of strength. You don't want to lose that muscle. So you really want to eat as much protein as you can, at least 80 to 90 to 100. Usually I like to say 80 grams to 120 grams for most adult females is really ideal. And that is so hard to do on this medication. Many of my clients have been like, all I can do is down a protein shake and or two. And sometimes I can look at a piece of cheese and eat it. And so that's where it gets a little complicated with this, the way that the medication can really silence your hunger cues. So it's really important to potentially put in little times to set alarms to eat a little snack, have things readily available, or make sure that when you're looking at food, even if you're not like super crazy hungry, if you know that you should eat something. If you haven't eaten in the last 2 or 3 hours, you should probably eat something and just honestly kind of force yourself to eat something. And that's the trade-off with this medication is a lot of people will lose that food noise altogether. Food noise being that communication of your brain to your stomach of, hey, I'm hungry, can you get me some food? If that is silenced, you need to speak for it in a way. And you can do that by setting up things like putting in timers for your phone to be like, hey, you should probably eat something, or just paying attention to the clock and being like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten something since like 10 a.m. It's now 1 p.m. I for sure need to eat a meal. So that is what I want to leave this part of the section on is you do have to have a little bit more intention around having meals, how much meals you eat throughout your day, and making sure that you understand like just around how much you're eating then. A lot of people will get into this really toxic diet mentality of like, oh my gosh, I'm not hungry at all I ate was a cheese stick. Like I'll probably lose weight faster and then that'll get me to my goal faster. And so overall, this is a good thing. But then your body's going to suffer and you're going to start to suffer the consequences. Like a lot of people are starting to struggle with depressive like symptoms because they have been starving their body so much of nutrients. And, some people will get an anxiety response. Some people will actually just physically feel so fatigued all the time that they just don't feel like doing anything, which, losing your zest for life is not going to be good for you just because you're skinnier. We've watched people suffer with this kind of thing for our entire lives, like throughout high school. Tell me a girl who didn't know a girl who suffered from, an eating disorder that put her into kind of a husk of a human throughout it. I've personally had a lot of friends. I even had some of my own relationship with food struggles and like body image stuff because that's just so unfortunately common, especially for females in their teenage years. So this is something you don't want to revert to. So this is really important that you pay attention to making sure that you get enough food even if you don't feel like it, because those hunger cues are going to possibly be gone. So really, really, really cannot emphasize that enough. So don't let yourself fall into the like, oh, as little as possible if I eat and I just drink coffee all day, really bad health habits. We don't want to revert to that. So, all right, that's it for this section, but we're going to talk about a couple of protein rich snack ideas that you can prep and have available in your fridge that will be really important for you as we close out this episode, okay? Okay, so again, it is important for you to branch out and try recipes. So I would highly recommend that any of these ideas, the base ingredients that I'm going to give you, that you maybe look into a way to kind of spice it up, literally, through Pinterest or something where you can find great recipes that will help you enjoy them better, because a lot of times we don't like certain things because we've had possibly a really crappy version of it. Like I know a lot of people who hate vegetables, but their mom just steamed their vegetables and didn't put any seasoning on them, which is like murder to vegetables. So if you don't like certain vegetables because you've had it in a really crappy manner when you're a kid, maybe try a new recipe where you roast them and you put a good amount of salt and different, sea salt or kosher salt, and good seasonings and you make it really interesting, and you put a sauce on it, or you just shave Parmesan over it, because that's totally fine. Parmesan is actually, it doesn't have hardly any lactose, because the aging process, the little bugs that are eating things, they eat the lactose, because everything basically lives off of sugar. So a lot of the lactose is removed from Parmesan, and you're basically just getting straight fat and protein. So shaving a little bit of Parmesan in your vegetables can completely change your experience with the vegetables, and it's hardly enough cheese or to be significant in a bad way. And it can be a really natural source of protein and fat, right? Because it's from cow's milk, or whatever milk is utilized for whatever aged cheese you have. So aged cheeses are great for that reason. They are a little bit higher in protein in comparison to fat, whereas a lot of the creamy, not aged cheeses are usually higher in fat and higher in lactose, because they're not aged, so they don't get time for those little bacteria to eat the sugar out of it, aka the lactose. So that's a little pro tip. But here's some snack ideas. So you can do hard-boiled eggs or deviled eggs. Deviled eggs can be a really fun one, especially if you are somebody who likes deviled eggs, because they are usually a lot easier to eat and they have a lot more flavors going on. You can do Greek yogurt with antioxidant-rich berries. It's really important to keep your Akkermansia gut bacteria happy and healthy. So like wild blueberries, blackberries, marionberries, raspberries, strawberries even, a lot of those are going to be very antioxidant rich. The darker blue the berry is, typically the better it is going to be when it comes to antioxidants and a variety of fibers that are available to help your gut motility. But Greek yogurt, you're going to want to look for ones that are higher than 12 grams in a serving. So it's not going to be very protein rich if you're getting under 12 grams in a serving of your yogurt. It's probably going to be a higher fat yogurt or a higher sugar yogurt, which is kind of counterproductive to, getting enough protein, because we want to have at least 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, at minimum 20 grams, but then you're going to need to spread that out maybe 5 meals throughout the day. So Greek yogurt is a really simple way to do that, but you want to find one and doctor it up in a way that increases the fiber. So berries, some nuts, some seeds, some granola, like I think the company Purely Elizabeth, Simply Elizabeth, whatever it is, has some really great gluten-free, whole grain, organic options of granola that I've found to be really great. So that is a really great go-to snack. And, a little pro tip is, if you actually put some of that granola in the Greek yogurt, mix it, put it back in the fridge for about half an hour to an hour, and you pull it back out and top it with the berries or whatnot, it actually becomes like cheesecake, which is awesome. That's something that I had discovered by accident back in my college days when I was a little fitness nut. And I had to run to class and I didn't get to eat my yogurt. So I just threw it into the fridge. And then when I got home, I had it. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. It tastes like cheesecake. So definitely a pro tip there if you want to find something that's more like a healthier dessert option. So, and again, aged cheeses or sharp cheddar cheeses, so that's more on the aged side. They are typically a little bit lower in fat, and then they're lower in lactose, and they're higher in protein. So cheese sticks or cheese cubes, those are totally fine options, especially when, you're trying to get nutrients in. So again, better quality is better. So I would say try to go for maybe local cheeses. You can go to the cheesemonger in Whole Foods if you have one locally, or any of your other local stores, and try to get like local made sharp cheddars or aged cheeses. I'm not a huge fan of the big companies, because they typically will mix in or use chemicals that are not ideal. So that would be my best advice, is try to go local when it goes to picking cheeses. So low ingredient jerky or meat sticks. So that brand that is called Chomps or Paleo Valley, those are really great options. You don't want to go for the really high fat ones, so try to avoid that. But Chomps makes little mini ones, which are really great, because then you can kind of have a little variety in your day. And I wouldn't recommend you eat those every day, but for snacks or grab on the go, those can be really great protein options, but they will have more fat. So kind of feel it out, see how your body is reacting to whatever fat level is currently in it. But any other types of leaner jerky can be great as well, because it is, pure protein and it's animal protein. So it's complete. You're going to be getting all the amino acids your body needs for a variety of systems going on. Another pro tip that a lot of my clients have found to be great is tuna, smoked salmon, or chicken salad with You can mix it with even Greek yogurt. Some people have mixed it with Greek yogurt, but if you're not a huge fan of that tartness, you can go with an olive oil based mayonnaise. Try to do it as light as possible. And there's a whole bunch of other creative recipes out there, honestly, guys, that just, again, look on Pinterest or something and you can find something that fits a little bit more of your fancy. But you can eat that on like whole grain or seed crackers or gluten-free crackers, rice crackers, whatever it is. That can be a really fantastic snack that is easier to eat and will fill you up and provide you with more nutrients. Seed crackers can be a really great hack because you're going to be getting a little bit more fiber alongside the protein coming from the tuna or the smoked salmon or the chicken salad. So, and that's something that you can batch prep. So you can make a giant batch of that and then just portion it out into little Tupperwares, or you can just leave it in the bowl and portion it out if you work from home. And it's awesome hack, and it's really tasty. So just, again, find a recipe that you really like, and that'll help you the best with that. Cottage cheese, cottage cheese has had its time to shine this year. And for those of us like me who've loved cottage cheese ever since we were little, it's kind of hilarious, but it's great because some people have also made some really creative, interesting recipes with cottage cheese. You can even blend and make a cottage cheese wrap, like a tortilla type thing that you can wrap a bunch of stuff in. You could probably even turn it into like a crepe like thing if you want to get creative, and you can put some, vanilla Greek yogurt in it with some fruit and wrap it up and eat it kind of like a crepe. Or, eat cottage cheese the way it is with some fresh pineapple, peaches, or some people like to go savory. Like my husband likes to put pepperoncinis and black pepper in there, which makes me want to barf, but I'm sure it's good to people who like the savory side. And you can also, I think, do like tomatoes with some salt and pepper too. The options are endless with cottage cheese. I've made protein waffles for years with cottage cheese. And so there's a lot of options. Okay. So get creative with your cottage cheese. That's a great one. And, maybe try it in different ways if you're somebody who's always been like, oh, I don't like cottage cheese. Cause that's a really common thing that I've heard. But usually it's because they've had like boring cottage cheese when they were young. And the final one I want to say is low ingredient protein shakes. So if they're pre-made protein shakes, you want to look for really low ingredients. So like Iconic is a great brand of a pre-made protein shake with grass-fed whey isolate protein powder. You want to look for that, or protein bars that are low ingredients. So we usually want to see protein bars that are under 8 ingredients, that are higher in a good quality protein. Not a huge fan of proteins like soy or pea protein. Those are usually going to be highly GMO'd, laden with quite a bit of glyphosate because those are big monocrops here in the US or wherever they are growing them. And it can cause digestive distress and or not be very digestible. So you may not even get the protein from when you're consuming it. So that is something that a lot of people don't know, is that protein bars can talk a big game on their label, but the way that your body can assimilate and break down the protein that they give you and how much of it you actually absorb is going to be different. And so that's why I'm not the biggest fan of plant-based protein, because it can be much harder for majority of people's guts because of the way it's highly processed. So whey isolate or any of those different, egg white protein, all of those are going to be the easiest for your body to digest and get nutrients out of. But again, if you are somebody who's plant-based, it's totally okay to try to go for those bars. Just make sure that you're paying attention to your overall day. I would say, honestly, on this type of medication, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you're going to struggle the most out of everybody when it comes to getting enough nutrients. So it's imperative that you have a high quality therapeutically dosed multivitamin. If I had to have a recommendation, and I'm not affiliated with the company, the brand Needed, Needed, they make a great therapeutically dosed multivitamin. You would want to get their bigger guy, the one that I think is like 6 capsules for a serving, versus their smaller one, which is like 3 capsules a day or 2 capsules a day. You want to get the higher dosed version because you're going to need more. Your body's going to need to try harder to get enough nutrients. And that's just the way it is, simply by, what makes up animal proteins versus plant-based proteins, and then the volume, the sheer volume you have to eat of plant-based proteins to get enough. When you're on GLP-1 med, you're not going to be able to eat that much in volume. So that's really important. Little tiny side note that I would definitely suggest you consider. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode. I hope that it was helpful for you for better understanding how to navigate the Ozempic, GLP-1, semaglutide world when it comes to snacks and meals throughout the holiday season. I know I kind of talked about it as more of a general concept, because this is a really good concept for you to put in through the rest of, your season using GLP-1 meds. However, I definitely recommend that you pay really close attention to the treats and stuff that you usually would eat through the holidays and observe and eat slower so that you can kind of know whether or not your body's going to have a bad reaction, because we don't want a bad reaction. You don't want to get nauseous all day. You don't want to be barfy. You don't want to have a whole bunch of brain fog and stomach aches, because nobody got time for that. That's not fun. So I hope that you can share this with anybody who is on this medication that you think will benefit from all the advice that I gave today. And as always, celebrate your strength and nourishment. Walk with confidence. I'll catch you next week on another episode of Rebel Wellness. What did you think about that episode? If you enjoyed it, I hope that you would come join my community on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast, or my coaching page at Kaylee Loren, or both. I would love to see your name pop up on my new follows list. I might say hello if I catch you. And I would also like to invite you to come check out my website, coachkales.com, if you're interested in seeing any more of the educational learning resources I have created for you. I have a whole ton of amazing free downloads that you can dip your toe in the water of what working with me looks like. And if you are really vibing with what I have to say and how I teach it, come explore my courses that are available for purchase. They are all do it yourself. In the near future, I plan to have some awesome group coaching that will be all live, so stay tuned for that. And the best way to know when I'm going to launch those is through my monthly wellness newsletter, which is my hand-curated, not AI-generated, monthly all things health and wellness newsletter that I created to be your new favorite resource for staying up to date with the latest in the health world, self-care resources that I've created, and a bunch of the clean beauty picks that I personally use myself, and a whole lot more, as well as early access and discounts to anything that I create in the future for specifically my newsletter signup. So if you'd like to sign up, head to coachkales.com and add yourself to my mailing list. Last but not least, I would absolutely love it if you would help our podcast grow by simply sharing a rating or review wherever you stream and are listening to me right now, and share it on your social medias or text it to some friends or family members if this episode resonated and was something that you think could help somebody else, because I really would love to help anybody in your circle if I've been helping you. So I absolutely am so grateful that you're here. And if you listened all the way through, you are a real one. So all right, Rebel, until next episode.